And finally, we can put a full stop at the end of international rugby in 2025. The unsavoury incident that happened at the end of the Wales-South Africa game between Etzebeth, his thumb and Alex Mann's eye, has been put to bed now with the disciplinary panel crossing the T's and dotting the I's. Sorry, too soon. And they've decided a 12-week ban is appropriate. Well, an 18-week ban reduced to 12 due to previous good conduct. Your thoughts? Let me know what you think in the chat down below. My gut feeling when I saw this was, lucky boy. He's done well. He should feel grateful it wasn't more, because it could have been. Particularly when you actually look at what he's been found guilty of, which is intentional contact with the eyes. There's a lot of talk about the different frameworks and different offences. The lowest tariffs and offence is contact with the eye area. Then there's reckless contact with the eye, which is what I thought it would have been. Because my read on the incident was that he meant to grab Alex Mann's face and left the possibility open that he might make contact with the eye, which is a silly thing to do, can't be condoned, and is beyond the line that you cross on a rugby field, so deserves a ban for it. But he's actually been found guilty of the worst offence, which is intentional contact with the eyes. Now, interesting that I saw Stephen Kitsoff's perspective on this before the ban had been announced. And his thought on, someone that's been a teammate of his, knows the guy really well. And much like me, his read of the situation is really silly thing to do. And you grab a guy's face, you leave the possibility there that you might make contact with the eye, which cannot be condoned or excused. And Stephen Kitsoff said, so I think it was accidental, which was my read. And he said, anyone that does that intentionally should get a ban of 2 years minimum. That was his perspective. And I understand that. So which is why I'm quite... Intentional contact with the eyes is that's quite a thing to be found guilty of. I don't know if he pleaded guilty to that, but consequently, almost, there's an element, because that is what he has been found guilty of. I actually think the conversation, a lot of the conversation I've seen is people going, oh, it should be more, should be less, should be way more, not enough, all the rest of it. I actually kind of think there's an element where I think that's just irrelevant, because when all is said and done, Etzebeth is going to be regarded as maybe the greatest player in his position ever in the history of our sport. Has been, as the disciplinary panel rightly pointed out, has been exemplary in his character through his career until now. And that's why he had his ban reduced by 6 weeks. I also think that's the biggest shame and probably the biggest cost to Etzebeth is the reputational damage. Because again, he has been found guilty of intentional contact with the eyes. And there's an element, as I say, where I almost think the ban is irrelevant, because the sad thing for him is one of the greatest players ever to do it. However, he's also going to be remembered by many people as the guy that did that. And that's going to be, it's not going to be a shadow which overshadows his playing performances, which have been, like I say, one of the greatest we've ever seen. But it is going to be a shadow that walks 6 feet behind him, unfortunately, because it's just one of those things on a rugby pitch. As his old teammate Stephen Kitsoff said, it's just one of those things you just do not do and cannot do, even accidentally, which is what I thought it was. But there you go. I'm going to go through some other bans that have been handed down before. In fact, let me do that first, because I think there's a lot of people been saying it should have been much, much more. Like I say, I think the reputational damage is probably actually going to be worse. Also, when you consider that out of the 12 weeks that he is going to be on the sidelines, 8 of them were mandatory rest weeks anyway, so he's actually only missing a month of rugby, which is frustrating for the Sharks, but doesn't really make that much of a difference. The reputational damage does. But to the people that are saying this is a really, really light ban, I think you could make that case when you look at incidents like David Atube, the Stade Francais prop, who in a Champions Cup match in, 2010, gouged Stephen Ferris. The judge overseeing that disciplinary case said it was one of the worst cases of eye contact he's ever seen. And Stephen Ferris could have legitimately been made blind out of that incident. That's why it was so severe. And, like nearly a year and a half on the sidelines, and rightly so. Could have been longer for what he did, but there you go. So there have been longer bans given, but I think each case does have to be judged on its merits. And Alex Mann did not have any sort of injuries, fortunately, off the back of this incident, which I think is why. And at the other end of the scale, Henko Fenter earlier this year was found guilty after making contact with the eye of Dan Cole in a Champions Cup match against Leicester Tigers. And he says it was an accident, but nonetheless, and this was on the lower offence, so it was contact with the eye area. 12 weeks was the ban, reduced to 6 due to good conduct. So again, people saying that, dropping it by 6 weeks is not right. We've seen it before. And I mean, yeah, the whole disciplinary process, you could say, is a bit of a joke when they have these bans and then they drop it for good behaviour or for saying sorry, being remorseful, bringing nice packs of biscuits to the disciplinary panel, all the rest of it. Yeah, I know. But at least it's consistent. Henko Fenter, 6 weeks dropped was his ban. You've also got Dylan Hartley, a more severe ban. He was banned for 30 weeks. So over 6 months, and it was reduced to 26 weeks. So it was a 6-month ban. And he missed England's World Cup in 2027. And that's because he did it to 2 players in one match. So that is, again, so it's 26 weeks or it's 30. So it's nearly double what Etzebeth was given initially. And he did it to 2 players in the same game. So I guess I'm painting a picture that it's not so far beyond what has been done before. Chris Ashton, 10 weeks for, 10 weeks, and that was for making contact with the eyes of Ulster's Luke Marshall. Again, I don't know whether the description of what the bans are for has changed over time. He took that to appeal and it failed and the ban was upheld. 10 weeks was the ban. And then there was, what's another one? Scout Berger in that Lions series of 2009. And in fact, there's another one, 12-week ban for Alan Quinlan. He missed the 2009 Lions series because of that incident. And it was a 12-week ban. And that was on Leo Cullen. And then in that Lions series, Scout Berger, who got a yellow card in the match, which is crazy when you look back. But he got an 8-week ban. Which, yeah, I mean, that looks light compared to Etzebeth, doesn't it? 8 weeks looks that makes Etzebeth's ban look quite severe by comparison. It was silly. It was a silly incident. Like I say, all the talk about how many weeks should it have been, I think he probably is lucky, but the reputational damage will be the one that I think really hurts in the fullness of time. So if anyone's feeling like justice hasn't been served, then just consider that. I think I think in years to come, he'll regret it more than maybe he even does now, which I'm sure he does. Yeah. Also, one thing I want to say on the chat about what happened on the floor beforehand. I saw a lot of this. Following the video I did the other day, there were a load of people saying, but what about what Alex Mann did beforehand? What about what he did beforehand? And I kind of largely ignored that. I had a look at the pictures, some odd screenshots that were put on social media, like Brian Habana, the picture he put up. Did that not look like someone had photoshopped a thumb on the wrong side of Alex Mann's hand? It didn't look real. I don't know, but you couldn't tell anything from those pictures. But what I would say is the odd thing about other people, the odd thing about saying what Alex Mann did on the floor beforehand is 2 things. That was about 20, 30 seconds before the incident happened. And if you want to make that argument that it was in retaliation for something Alex Mann did, that makes it 10 times worse for Etzebeth, because that means something happened to him and he got up and retaliated by deliberately pushing his thumb in Alex Mann's eyes. And I'd just go back to what Stephen Kitsoff said. If someone does that deliberately, they should be banned for years, not weeks or months. So that's why I kind of just put to one side all the chat about what happened on the floor. The wet willy that Alex Mann may have given Sasha Feinbergen-Gomezulu or whatever. So there you go. There's some thoughts of mine. I'd love to know yours. I'm just glad it's all done, because actually what I'd rather have been talking about is all the brilliant international rugby that happened through 2025. And hopefully that's what we can get back to talking about. The Rugby Champions Cup coming up this weekend. And loads more besides. And I'll see you for that on the next video.